What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We had a special visitor stop by the shop today. It was Ira Houseweart. He's a blacksmith and bladesmith from the western slope of Colorado, and he's also a two-time Forged and Fire champion. He was out here on the Front Range doing some install work and some other jobs and swung by the shop to drop off some handle material to me, but he also dropped off something pretty special. This is a 105 layer stainless steel Damascus integral chef that he forged from scratch in his shop. So he took CPM 154 and ABL, forged it into his billet, cut and restacked, has 105 layers in here. I believe he did a ladder pattern on this. But it's peeking through the scale already, and it looks like it's going to be awesome. So I hope I can finish this out and do it justice. This isn't the first stainless steel Damascus that Ira has forged. I know he's successfully done it a couple other times as well. The last time that he did it was in the middle of last year, and I was at his shop and got to watch him make a low layer count billet. So it was like 12 layers. And it was really interesting to see how the steel moves differently and the temperature control required and so forth. I know since then he's been experimenting around and improving his methods for making billets, which is apparent because this is a 105 layer, so he's obviously cut and restacked this a couple times and forged a really nice shape out here. But knowing how much work goes into something like this, I'm excited and honored that he asked me to participate in this build. But I'm also a little nervous because I don't want to mess anything up and screw up so much work. But thank you, Ira. We'll do our best. But let's get you guys in here for a closer look at this before we get to work on it. So I think the first thing that we're going to do is anneal this. So we'll do a full anneal on it, and then we'll profile this out and start working on getting it ground to shape. So here I'm wrapping up the blade in a couple layers of stainless steel foil, and that is to reduce or eliminate any oxygen from getting in into that blade when it's in the annealing process. And the reason that we do that is because annealing, it takes a long period of time at high temperatures, and decarburization is a major concern because you could end up removing a significant amount of carbon from the steel, and we don't want that. That's a bad thing. And we're annealing this because we want to soften the steel so it's easier to work with. And then we also need to reset it, prepare it for a good response to austenitizing or your final heat treat. So if you're interested in this, Dr. Laren Thomas has a great article about how to anneal stainless steel after forging, and that's kind of where I took my guidance from for this build. And I've used this program before for annealing stainless steel of 1600 degrees, hold time for 30 minutes, and then cool at 100 degrees per hour down to 1000. But after referencing the article, I think we're going to increase this to hold time of 2 hours. And I was looking to see if I needed to adjust to 1650 or 1600. It looks like 1600 should work. So we're going to do that. But we'll get this into the kiln. And then we're going to adjust the hold time on this program. Let's go. Oh, I'm not in edit program, that's why. Anneal, edit schedule, okay. We'll do 2 hours. There we go. 1600 for 2 hours, then cool at 100 degrees per hour down to 1000 degrees. Hold time for a minute and then it'll shut off. So we're going to save that and then we will start that program. All right, so that program took 8 hours to run, and then we let it sit overnight in the kiln to cool down from 1000 just as slowly as the kiln would cool. So let's pull it out and see if we annealed it. It's biting in. Still pretty hard, but it's definitely softer than it was. So, and we had to anneal anyways to get this prepared for heat treat, to get it into a state that it's ready to be heat treated and austenitized appropriately. All right, let's maybe do a little bit of layout and get this thing to shape. Okay, we have the initial rough shape done. There was a little divot up here that I had to go down and take that out. But next, I think I need to lay out the bolster. I'm not quite sure. I think that'll be the best case, is to get everything in line with the blade. Lay out how I want the bolster. And maybe hit these transitions. And then we'll go into grinding the blade. Not quite sure. But let's get some 1, 2, 3 blocks out. And start drawing some lines and see where things go. So if you can't tell, I don't really know exactly what I'm doing. I'm just kind of thinking through the process and attacking it the best way that I can. This is the second integral that I've ever done. And coincidentally, the first one was a collaboration project with Ira as well. That was just in regular Damascus. But yeah, we're just kind of going through and figuring it out along the way and hoping that it works out. I wouldn't take this as the proper way to do an integral chef. So I cleaned up the transitions from the blade to the bolster, got those nice and radius with the small wheel, and then now I'm going through and cleaning all the forge scale off of the flats on the blade and the bolster. So we're just cleaning up all the surfaces, getting down to good steel, and then we can do further layout and grinding from there. So I put the file guide on here just for an initial cleanup of the bottom of that bolster and the tang as well. But we're going to take that off and end up doing the final layout further down the road. So here I go back to grinding on the flats. I want to thin out the blade, get through the remainder of that forge scale. The heel on this is a little bit thinner because, you know, Ira had to thin it out there to forge and draw out the heel on the blade. And so I'm just getting it all down to one consistent ground surface into good steel. And this is, even though it's annealed, it was hard. I was running that grinder fast and using fresh belts, and it was just eating through my belts, dulling them really fast. It was pretty interesting. We've kind of gotten the scale off and down through some of the surface imperfections on the majority of the blade. You can see here there's still like a section there, and then obviously the heel from where he drew it out. But we have our profile overall. The heel of the knife shaped out. I may adjust this because I think there's a little bit of rock back here, which we don't want. But I'll take that out of the belly here. But anyways, I think we're good now to start laying out and getting the tang and the back side of the bolster all figured out, because we have nice flat surfaces here. This thing is just eating through belts. Just to clean up these two sides, I went through two fresh 36 grit belts. So yeah, this one's going to be fun to grind and hand sand for sure. But yeah, anyways, on to the next. All right, so I need this file guide to fit over this. But the sides of this are not, there's high spots, so it's pivoting. So I scribed some lines on here. Let's see if we can zoom in for you. So I scribed a line here, and then I did another one back here. And I'm trying to hit it with my file to kind of really flatten those surfaces out. And then we'll see if we can get this file guide to sit on there and hold on. So we can really file in the shoulders all around the tang and get a nice 90-degree flat surface around the entire thing. But we'll see if we can get a nice flat surface. If not, we'll have to keep fiddling with it. So the lines that I scribed are parallel with the blade. So I laid the blade on 1, 2, 3 blocks and then used the height gauge and scribed this line, and then flipped it 180 and scribed that line. That's awful noise. So I fiddled around with filing that and sanding it and doing all kinds of stuff to try to get that file guide to sit flush on there. And I just couldn't get it to work out. So one of my buddies recommended wrapping some foil around that. And then it just compresses and fills up those tiny little gaps that are creating high spots and allow that file guide to pivot. And this actually worked out pretty good. It was a little finicky, had to fiddle with it multiple times and go back and forth, but it worked out to where I could keep that file guide nice and solid and it wasn't moving around while I was filing on the bottom end of that bolster. I think some of my issue was that the bolster itself is angled, and so it was only touching at the top edge. So having a straight sided bolster would probably be easier to do. So I did a lot of handwork with the file to flatten the bottom part of that bolster. And here you can see it's all flush with that file guide. I found that I have to make sure that it's all flush and all good to go before removing the file guide, because getting it back on in the exact same position is almost impossible, at least for me. So yeah, there we go. So here I'm using a carbide burr to carve a moat around my tang to make my fit up easier. But I did this a little bit prematurely, and I'll talk about that in the next clip. So I was carving the moat around here, and I realized that I don't have my bolster to size. So as I'm going around there, I don't know how far out to come to where I won't eat through that edge. So I stopped. We're going to do layout on this and get the bolster somewhat shaped. And then later down the road, we'll carve that moat around there, that relief. So it'll bed easier into the handle material. But almost made a mistake there. All right. So now throw on the small wheel and take care of this area here. Cool. So after touching up the radius on the choil transition to the bolster, I mark out my chamfers with a set of calipers. That way I know how far in I'm going to go on each corner. And I'm just doing these equal distance, so they're like 45-degree chamfers. And then take it over to the small wheel here and just grind them in slowly. So I got them close to the line, but not all the way down, and then just finished it up with the file to make sure to take out any waviness left behind by the small wheel and make sure I didn't mess them up. All right, octagonalized. Roughed them in on the grinder and then did some hand filing. But yeah, so now it's got some good shape to it. Corners are, yeah, it feels good in the hand. This area will thin down later, obviously, when we grind. And round it over, and then round over the spine as well. But yeah, feels really nice and comfortable. And then obviously handle coming off there. Now that the bolster is appropriately sized, I can go back in and carve my moat, which removes a little bit of material so it makes it easier when you're fitting up your handle. It's just fitting up to the outside edge and not across that entire face. It also smooths out that 90-degree transition from the bolster to the tang, reducing the chance of stress risers causing an issue during heat treat. So there we go. I may thin this out just a little bit because I think we're sitting at, it's still pretty thick on the edge here. Yeah, we're at 1/8 of an inch on the edge. So I may bring this down to, I don't know, 50 thou or something like that. Or, yeah, maybe I won't touch it. Anyways, bolster is all done. Really nice and squared off there. Everything's chamfered. I sanded it up to 220. That wasn't exciting, so I didn't film it. But yeah, I think we're good to go. I have my moat cut in around my tang to reduce the contact area that I have to fit up when I'm doing my handle. We're also going to do an heirloom fit with this, so the handle will be proud of it, or museum fit, whatever you want to call it. That's just a good practice when mating wood, which can expand and contract even though it's stabilized, up to, a fixed rigid metal surface. So, yeah, and we also have our tang 2-dimension. It's square. I might taper it some more, but the important part that's down here with the bolster is dimensionally where I want it. So we can drill a 5/16 inch hole in the handle material and then use a broach to square it off. And then we may shorten this tang a little bit, just depending. But yeah, I think it's looking good. So we're going to heat treat tomorrow. It's a little late in the day. If we're going to heat treat now, get the kiln to warm up, get this blade up to temp, quench, and then the kiln to cool off, do cryo for this, and to do the temper cycles, we'd be up till like past midnight. So we will do the heat treat on this one tomorrow. think we're finally making some headway on it. So awesome. All right, so we got the kiln heating up here. We have about another 100 degrees. We're going to go to 1975 and then put the blade in. Soak it at temp for 20 minutes, and then we'll pull it out and plate quench it. So I think 1975 is a good temperature, austenitizing temperature for both of those steels, CPM 154 and ABL. CPM 154, you can push it higher, higher temps, austentize at higher temps than you can ABL. But I think this is a good balanced heat treat for both of those steels. So yeah, we'll come back when I'm about to put this in the kiln and show you guys that. All right, we're almost up to temp. I'm gonna put this in there. So blade is facing this direction. The things that I'm thinking about for this quench is we're gonna have ice bucket down here. I have water cooled quench plates. And then it's gonna come out of the kiln and go into the quench plates up to where the bolster is. And then we'll screw this down. These plates flex a little bit in this vise, and so they will conform with the blade. But it's fairly equal, like parallel from spine to edge. It is have a little bit of distal taper. And then I'm going to be using air to spray between the plates, but also I think I'm going to cut this with some scissors and get the air into there so I can cool this bolster down. All right. So we're heat treated. You can see that pattern popping through now. Oh, I'm excited about this. Very cool. I'm just going to do a quick file test. Oh, yeah. Skating it hard. Awesome. Okay, so we're good and hard. Now we're going to go into cryo. So into some liquid nitrogen. That'll sit for probably 2 hours while my kiln cools down to tempering temperatures. And then we'll put this in there and temper. So far, so good. Maintained its straightness. I don't see any warps in there. We'll check it after the first temper cycle, and then we'll adjust if necessary. So for those of you that don't know, we do a liquid nitrogen treatment on stainless steels immediately after heat treat, aka a cryogenic treatment, to convert retained austenite to martensite, which in turn increases hardness, wear resistance, which correlates directly to edge retention, which is an important design feature for a kitchen knife. Here it is defrosting after coming out of the liquid nitrogen before it goes into the temper oven for its temper cycles. And here it goes into the oven for two 2-hour temper cycles at around 325 degrees. So we temper the blade after heat treat and cryo to reduce internal stresses, reduce brittleness, and increase the toughness. Now that the blade is heat treated, we can grind in the bevels. And I'm a big fan of wet grinding. As you can see, I have 2 nozzles there spraying water onto my belt and on the blade. And this just reduces the amount of heat buildup in that blade and keeps it cooler for longer. So I still do have to dunk it and cool it off in my water bucket, but not as often. It also reduces the amount of dust that I produce when I'm grinding. As you can see, I'm still wearing a respirator, but it significantly reduces the amount of dust that's produced when grinding. There are some negatives. It is messy. I have to wear that apron, otherwise I get drenched. My feet get wet too. And in the winter, that's not so fun. And then also I have to change out bearings and things like that that get rusted on my grinder more often than I normally would. But overall, I really, really like wet grinding. So I ground full flat bevels on this from the edge all the way up to the spine, so it has a nice distal taper from the bolster all the way out to the tip, and then took the edge down extremely thin, under 5 thousandths. So I could tell from grinding that the wear resistance on the steel was pretty high. And then when I went to hand sanding, it became pretty miserable. I tried red Indasa, just a regular aluminum oxide sandpaper, and it didn't really do much. It was taking forever. So I picked up some of the silicon carbide sandpaper, and it seemed to cut and abrade a little bit better. But it still took forever to hand sand this. And here we get a first good look of the pattern that Ira did on this blade and the steel, and it is just awesome. We're going to continue hand sanding this up to 600 grit before we etch. next is the handle. I have this beautiful piece of stabilized two-tone Amboyna burl, and I wanted to shorten it just a little bit so that diagonal color line is right in the middle of the handle. So we're gonna get center marked on this and then drill it and start shaping. Laying out my handle shape here, I'm going to be doing a tapered wah, which is an octagonalized handle. I felt like doing the wah handle would fall in line with the style of this build since we're doing a Giotto-esque blade shape. And so I'm going to rough cut this out and then we'll finish shaping it on the grinder. There was a lot of test fitting and then taking it apart and then touching it up on the grinder just to make sure that everything was squared off to the bolster and the blade before laying in my chamfers. So after I had it where I liked it and it looked good, I switched over to using my 45-degree chamfer jig. I use that for putting chamfers on most of my other knife scales, but I'd never tried it on a wah handle before and figured this would be a good chance to test it out, and it worked great. So didn't matter that it was tapered. I just followed along with the taper of the blade and laid in those 45-degree chamfers. If you're interested in one of these chamfer jigs, I carry them on my website underneath my tools and accessories section. After roughing in my chamfers on the jig, I finished them vertically on the belt to reorient the grind lines and smooth everything out. Also, knocked in some little chamfers on the butt end and the front end of the handle. The handle is now shaped and sanded up to about 400 or 600 grit, and I'm gonna do something that I've been wanting to do for a while now. I've been sandblasting my handles that I do in bog oak or ironwood, and it gives a really nice texture to the wood. But I've recently taken some inspiration from pipe makers where they will mask off a section of their pipe and then blast another section. So you get these contrasting textures. And I thought that would look really good on a knife handle. So what I'm doing here is I'm gonna mask off the flats and then I'm gonna leave the chamfers exposed and sandblast those. And it ends up turning out really, really nice. Most people didn't notice it at first when they were handling the knife. And then once I pointed out, they're like, oh yeah, like this gives a really cool texture and it's like visually intriguing when you're looking at it up close. All right, time for sandblasting. I didn't sand my flats all the way up to the final grit in case some abrasive got underneath the tape. So now I'm gonna hand sand these up to 1500 grit, and then I'm gonna buff the handle. All right, folks, well, that's a wrap. We finished this one up, and I just love how it turned out. The overall feel of the knife in the hand is great. The thinness of the geometry, it's going to perform extremely well. The overall shape and size, and then the intricate details like the blasted chamfers on the handle and everything like that are just wonderful. So thank you, Ira, for including me in this project and trusting me to finish this out well. It was a pleasure working with your steel, and it was definitely a challenge, but a welcome challenge. If you're interested in owning this knife, you'll be able to find it on my website, northedgetools.com. Link is in the description. And if you have any questions, please let Ira or myself know. Drop them down in the comments below and we'll get back to you. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching this build, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.